Hello, White Sox fans, and welcome to another edition of FutureSox Live. My name is Ian Eskridge. Joining me is James Fox. How you doing, James?
Good, sir. How's it going?
Not too bad. So we have a White Sox organization that is in flux currently. There's so many rumors and things going around. So we brought somebody that likes to talk actual White Sox on here, Major League Baseball White Sox, to join us tonight. Beefloaf, let's welcome him in. How you doing, Beef?
I'm good, boys. Thanks for having me back. I always love jumping on here and cutting it up with you guys.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on right now.
There is a ton, and Beef is one of the guys I usually think of when I want like big picture White Sox thoughts. So,
well, I mean, I guess we'll start off something that I heard today, and this is, kind of leading into some other things. Did you guys happen to hear that Guaranteed Rate has refused to change the signage over at Guaranteed Rate Field?
No, I did not hear this.
Yeah, they changed the name of their business to just Rate, I guess.
Rate. Yeah, they got in trouble, right? There was some issue. They got in trouble, and they needed to change the name of the company. I remember that part. But the stadium's like, no, we're just leaving it.
They said that they're not going to change the signage on the outside of the stadium. So it's still going to say Guaranteed Rate.
Why?
Absolutely absurd. I have no idea. I guess they don't want to spend the money on it. I mean, I'll go out there with a Sawzall, and just cut it off. But
get a ladder when you go up there.
So obviously, I kind of wanted to lead into the Reinsdorf selling rumors, and I've seen most of the people I know kind of think it's just a ploy to try and drum up some interest so they get some money over at the 78. Is this how you guys are feeling about this whole thing?
well, so like it's how I feel about it. I just think like if you're gonna sell a baseball team, like you don't have one bidder, right? Like you're not just gonna like sell it to Tony La Russa's buddy who's already proven that he's kind of bad at this, right? Like I joke though that it's like be careful. Like I see the thing that's like, oh, Reinsdorf selling, and then it's like Dave Stewart, and it's like, no, it's just like the Han and Kenny are fired, and they hire Chris Getz thing, or the hey, they're gonna hire AJ Hinch. No, wait, they're gonna hire Tony La Russa. It's like we can't have nice things, but no, like I also think, and Beef, you know a lot more about this than I do, but I'm like under the impression that he's gonna like lose his ass if he sells right now. Like I always hear about the capital gains tax, whatever that means. Like, so a lot of people think like he's not gonna sell because it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I was gonna say having been a tax accountant at least, and I don't know if franchises are exactly the same as like the way real estate works, but in real estate, if you hold on some real estate, if you were Jerry's age, you would never sell it because what you would do is you would pass it on to your heirs and they get a step up in basis. So it might have been, it might have bought it for some low number, but at the point that someone passes away and they pass it on to their heirs, you can step that basis all the way up to whatever fair value is, kind of eliminating any tax whatsoever. That's why a lot of fortunes are built via real estate, because you can hold the thing for a long time, then you kind of get out of paying taxes with it for a while. I don't know if franchises work exactly the same way, but they might have some of those components as well. But it would be a substantial capital gains tax. I mean, the guy, the group put in $20 million to buy it in 1981, and now it's worth, many multiples of that. I mean, the estimate I think at Forbes is like $2 billion, but those estimates, you never know. Like there's very rarely an execution in the marketplace, right? I mean, I guess the last one was probably the Mets. It's rare that some of these change hands. So to really know the price, no one really knows until it actually kind of moves. But yeah, I would think it's tough.
You're adding a bunch of zeros on to, like stuff that you're probably used to looking at, monetarily. When it comes to a major league franchise. So I have to imagine that there's got to be like some change in like at least in like the percentage of it, But I mean, like you said, like the unrealized gains at this point are so massive compared to what they put into it. It's absurd.
But regards with the posturing, we talked a little bit on the 108 podcast about this. We as a group, we weren't unanimous on this, but my personal take on it was they're still just trying to socialize the thought of maybe we sell, the socialize the thought of maybe we move to try to create any leverage whatsoever that they can with regards to the 78. Maybe even potentially if they know if they can't get the 78 to get themselves a cheap extension on the lease over here. Whatever they're kind of going for, they're kind of potentially reaching for. Can we add some leverage to this? And it looks like real weak form of leverage, right? You and I, and we all look at it, we're like, oh, we know what they're up to here, But all they really need to do is give enough legislators a story that they can get behind so that they can get some of the. I don't think anyone thinks the White Sox are getting all the money they need for the 78. But I also think the White Sox don't think we're getting $0 for this. We're going to come out here with something. You've seen the Denzel clip. I'm going home with something. I think that is like their perspective on it. And like, so they're going to keep floating these things out there and try to remind everyone, hey, we could sell. Oh, we could move this team, whatever, and keep the tea leaves out there as much as possible. I think that's the approach. I'd be surprised. I know I shouldn't say this. I know some people that are worth quite a bit, and they're older gentlemen. And look, they don't want to take their ball home and quit just because we're cashing their chips. They like being players. They like being in the game. Part of it is the power of being in the game, being a player, hustling around with everybody else. I have to think Jerry Reinsdorf feels the same way about baseball. He likes to be a player. He likes to be in on this stuff. It would shock me if he was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to sell to the highest bidder right now. Unless he was in bad health or something or that was making that decision for him. A perfectly fine Jerry Reinsdorf, I would think, has almost 0% chance of selling. He likes doing this. He wants to be in there. He wants his fingers dirty in this.
Well, the other thing too, like I think we found out that he owns 19% of the club, but his kids went and bought a bunch of shares. So I don't know how much the family owns. Like they could, like I don't think anybody knows like how much they own. So I thought that part interesting. The other part that I feel like is just glossed over is like everybody just assumes that Dave Stewart wants to move a team to Nashville still. Like he left that group. Like I think he just wants to own a team anywhere. Like at this point,
yeah.
Like, anybody that would sell to his like makeshift group, because like apparently it sounds like he's kind of been like laughed out of the room twice. Like when he's tried to do this, like they're like, well, where's the money? And it's like, oh, I have it. It's like, okay, but like where, Dave? And then it's kind of gone to other people. So this could be a help for him, like as much as it is like a perceived help for Jerry.
That's a good point, James. And I was thinking about that as well because, they call it closing risk in real estate, where you won't do a deal with someone if you don't think they have the money, if you don't believe that they can come up with the money. And anyone who has a mortgage, you might know this. You put down 10% or 20%, and the lender, whoever that is, could be a bank or someone else, is putting the rest down. And sometimes you don't close because the money doesn't drop. And I'll tell a story for myself. Back in the golden years when you have to put hardly anything down, my wife and I bought our first condo in 2004. We put like 3% down. The money did not land that day. In fact, we were shut out of our place with the lender's money didn't get there. And I think this is what Dave Stewart eventually got there, but it didn't get there the day it was supposed to. I think this is what Dave Stewart is going through, is no one believes they got the money. And so like for that to be, oh, we might sell to this person, it's like no one in the marketplace thinks they got it. So it seems a little far-fetched. I agree.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing that you get the seat at a table in the like the third largest market in the United States, and then you pick it up and move it to a smaller place. Even if you are the top dog there, like it just seems like you're still taking a step away financially doing that.
Yeah, and obviously, like, I don't think any of us want the team to move, but it does seem like it doesn't really make sense for the other owners either, right? Like, expansion team in Nashville makes a lot of sense because they're going to get their $3 billion or whatever to split.
Yeah,
relocating is not the same at all.
Right, yeah, exactly. You're not getting paid like that. They want expansion teams when they can get expansion teams, which is why they ain't letting a team move from here, and they've got to kind of settle up Tampa. I guess Oakland's semi-settled. I don't know if they're actually going to end up in Vegas or not. It seems like they are, but like, yeah, they got to settle some of them teams before they can start getting the expansion teams coming. And yeah, they want to get their fee, get their big fee, not have a team from a good market move to one of the potential expansion markets. Seems insane.
Yeah, not to mention, you put the, as far as Major League Baseball goes, they're putting themselves into a second situation where you're kind of throwing another franchise up in the air where you don't know exactly where they're going to go if their plans are to leave Chicago. So That doesn't make any sense either. I will just throw this out here. I used to work for a billionaire way back when. So the guy, he was a tech guy, and the guy wore leather pants and crop top fishnet long sleeve shirts.
Hell yeah.
The guy wanted to be out there, and I kind of have a feeling that they're probably all like that because they're used to doing the white collar thing, and they kind of want to let loose a little bit. Granted, this guy was hanging out with bands and stuff like that, but still, so. So I guess kind of move along here to the managerial candidates. And there is a kind of now there's a pretty vast selection of managerial candidates. I'm not entirely sure where they're going to go with this whole thing. Beef, where are you kind of thinking this is going to go? Are you thinking this is outside hire? Are you still thinking they're going to do the nepotism thing? Or like, how do you feel about this?
I mean, personally, I'd be shocked if it was anyone who's currently inside the building. I think they've gone through way too much effort for that to be the case. It would be surprising, and they've seemed to like beat down the door of all the quality candidates that you can kind of like think of or hear of. Without trying to dig into someone's dugout who's currently a manager and saying, hey, we want to try to pull you out of here. All the kind of up and coming candidates or recently displaced manager candidates, they seem to have been knocking down all those doors. For me personally, like, what do I like? I mean, I wrote about it in May when I was like picking people because we all kind of knew Pedro was going to be out of here at some point. We didn't know exactly when, but one of the guys I wrote about was Will Venable, who was his sitting caddy in Texas for Bruce Bochy. And I wrote him on then is he kind of had the right pedigree. And truth be told, the more I'm hearing, like I still like him. I really like this Donnie Ecker guy who's like the maestro of hitting or something. He's got a title of offensive coordinator, like he's fucking Mike Martz or something like that. But anyway, they hit and they seem to believe in his hitting program there. So for me, like I like those two guys. But I think the reason why I like them is because of their like ensemble of skills that I think would fit so well here. But that doesn't necessarily mean they'll be a good manager. Like the more I reflect back on like trying to think of like what would be a good manager, I end up to the point where I'm like, I don't really know. I don't really know what's a good manager. And these skills that we're talking about are a minor piece of all the things that encompass kind of being a manager, being a leader of people. And I think it also goes into like, everyone, what you do in your jobs, when people get picked to be a manager, some of the doers become good managers and they understand how to work with people and get the best out of the group. And some don't, some are just good doers. They're just good at doing those tasks. And so a lot of times I feel like we don't know and the teams don't know. The demographic across teams for managers is wild. Some of it's like, oh, we'll just pluck this player out of nowhere and he does a good job. Some of it's like we got this older manager that's been through the ringer a bunch of time, and Dusty Baker was like an example of that. He had been good or not good, or people were skeptical of it, and he kept getting done. In the Astros, he was good, like Bochy is, and then sometimes these guys have never played, and they throw him in there. I don't really know what the formula is, and I also don't even know after the fact. Like, I think as a White Sox fan base, we still have significant arguments about Ricky Renteria, the manager, Tony La Russa, the manager. I'm not trying to relitigate any of that, but even after the fact, we don't even know what the fuck is a good manager per se. So I like the boys from Texas, but if they hire someone else, I'm open to finding out if the person's good.
I had mentioned this to James last week after we got done doing our thing. This, and I said to him, this is the first time I can remember with the White Sox that an entire fan base isn't kind of like clamoring, at least mostly for one guy. It's like everybody's kind of got their feelers out and they don't really know who they want to grab. I mean, they got a couple of guys that they think might be okay, but they don't really know for sure. How you feel, James?
I mean, I think Will Venable will be seen as like the positive hire, like around like the industry or, whatever. And that's fine with me. Like Will Venable has turned down managerial jobs. So the fact that he interviewed for this one indicates some level of interest, right? So if that's like what they do, cool. Beef, I'm with you. Like, I think Ecker is the most interesting now because the White Sox can't hit and they've never been able to hit. But like, does that mean he can manage? No. But if they hired him, at least like I think it's like a clear vision type of thing. And then I think George Lombard's really interesting. Just here, I listened to Connor McKnight this weekend, kind of talking about the guys, and I just didn't know like his background. So he makes sense too. But the thing I was a little bit surprised, I feel like there's a lot of people that are just fine if they just bring back Grady Sizemore, which doesn't make any sense to me because he could be your outfield coach and you could pluck from another organization. Like, I don't know. I just don't really understand that whole part of the thing. And if it were him, like, I feel like they would have announced it by now.
Right. Yeah. I agree with you. I don't think they would have gone through all this and waiting for guys to finish the NLCS to do some more interviews. Like, and then they're like, oh, okay, we're just going to hire the guy who was already here. It seems bizarre to me. But what I really like about and it's the same thing as the last time, there was the process or whatever, is at least hopefully you're going to get some brain drain from these other organizations. If these other guys have to tell you what would be my plan for the White Sox, you should at least learn some things in the process. I'm hoping that this regime is absorbing that stuff, even for the people they don't hire. Hopefully they pick up kind of some things that they need because we're so far back in this thing. Like we're starting from worst record, that anyone could remember forward. So hopefully that they do pick up some of this stuff. But I'm kind of like, yeah, I read a lot of these names. I'm like, yeah, that guy sounds good. I'd probably be fine with him. There's not a lot of the list where I'm like, oh, that guy stinks. I don't want him. And you're right, Ian. Like right now, the list, or at least the public list, is people that we know they've interviewed or whatever. Most people are like, okay, yeah, I'd be amenable to these guys.
Yeah. Well, I think if there were more manager openings, most of these guys would be interviewing for all of those jobs, right? So like these are the right guy. It's like the right list of guys. And then whoever they hire is like, at least they didn't hire like Paul Konerko or something like the day after the season, right? It's just a typical, the way they used to operate. But no, this is fine. Beef, do you think you're going to know right away whether the guy sucks or not like you did last time?
I'm going to go ahead and assume that whoever they hire will sound more intelligent to me than Pedro Grifol did. Pedro Grifol sounded like he was reading a script to me. I assume that these guys who have, maybe are a little more trained up, especially like someone like Venable who has even turned down a job or whatever, is kind of like been the guy in waiting. He worked for Theo and them. I assume like I'm going to, right off the bat, I'm going to get more like, oh, this guy sounds smart. Now he'll probably be able to fool me because I'm not that sharp. But Pedro did not fool me. And so I think these guys probably be equipped. So I'll say no, but I reserve the right, James. Like if I hear that opening press conference, I'm like, oh shit, I don't know about this guy. I'll put it out there and I'll take all the heat if I'm wrong. So
Will Venable talking about kicking teams' asses at 7-10 every night,
yeah, that's a problem.
When I looked in your dugout, I saw a bunch of guys that didn't care. It's like, oh no. Oh,
don't run it back.
I tried so hard to be positive about him. I tried so hard. He made it increasingly difficult as things went on.
Ian, the first year when he said the thing, when they were clearly like donezo, right? When he said the thing about never sacrificing a major league win for development, I was done. I'm like, all right, I'm done. Like that doesn't make any sense. Like I'm done. Yeah.
Question here from Vince. What do you guys think of Showalter? At least he's been a winner, can work with the young guys.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know why Buck Showalter would want to do this. I mean, the thing that Keith Law said that he's like super involved, like over involved in player development. I don't know that that's like true. I have no reason to like not trust Keith Law, but like that doesn't seem like something Chris Getz wants to do right now.
No, you kind of need somebody that's going to stay in his box.
I was going to say, I don't think I overtly have any problems with Buck Showalter, but there's enough of a history with Buck where, one, teams burn out on him fast. Even if the teams are good, they're ready to fire his ass after like 3 years because he's a pain in the ass. Like, so that part. And two, he's got a kind of a big personality, right? He's been on TV or whatever. He was on Seinfeld back in the day when he was Yankees manager. And I don't know if Getz wants that big of a personality in the room to kind of like overshadow him in a way. And nothing against Chris, but like he's a younger guy. I think he would want a younger guy as the manager next to him so that there isn't some of this like, oh, well, this is the elder statesman and kind of overshadowing a little bit. If I were him, I would be protective of that sort of thing. That reminds me of like in Sopranos when Feach LaManna came out of jail. And like he was a problem right away because the younger guys liked him and he had the seniorities, like they had to send him back to jail because they were worried about it. That's to me how Buck Showalter could present a problem for a Chris Getz. So I don't like it from that perspective. But as a manager, I think he's fine. I mean, he whips teams into shape. He's decent.
Yeah. What do you guys think about, like, I feel like there's lots of people who kind of think this is like another like point A to point B manager, right? Like, oh, who cares who it is? They're going to be bad. Like, I don't know. Like, I kind of want to hire a guy that might be here for a decade if I can. Like, hire that guy, Like, why? Like, Will Venable, if he's the guy, like, why can't he be here when they're theoretically really good? It just doesn't make any sense. Like, oh, let's hire this guy for the rebuild, and then when it's time to win, you go hire somebody else. Like, that's kind of dumb.
I agree. I'm not a fan of that at all. Actually, I don't even think that A to B and B to C shit from my lifetime came from Doug Collins when they got rid of him and they brought Phil Jackson. But Doug had a couple things going on there. Allegedly, there was some affair that he needed to be kicked his ass out of town. And then also in Scottie Pippen's book, which I had heard some of this before, but in Pippen's book, basically he was saying that Doug was letting Michael run him over and like dictate kind of everything in there. And whereas when Phil got in there, Phil knew how to handle the personalities. It did not let Michael run them over, and that was like a better fit. And so like they were going to have to move off of Doug because he just catered to Michael way too much, and it was hurting all the rest of the team. So I'm not sure there's really an A to B. It was just time for Doug Collins to go. And so I agree with you, James. Hire a guy that could be here, see them through their growing pains, coach up this team, and when they're ready to be good, let them stay. Give them some more rope, and let's go.
What do you guys think about, like how they did with George Lombard in Detroit? He interviewed for the managerial job, didn't get it. AJ Hinch did, but he ends up coming on as the was the bench coach for the Tigers. If you, say you were to hire somebody like him, and you were to, possibly this list of guys that we've heard over the last couple of weeks. Possibly finding some guys that are going to fill some of the other vacancies and would still be a bump for them, considering where they're currently at. Would you consider like Donnie Ecker as like the hitting coach for the White Sox, because he's only been like an assistant and an offensive coordinator, whatever that actually means, I don't know. But apparently it's been successful because they won the team's Silver Slugger Award. But do you think that that's a possibility that they're going to fill from some of these interviews?
I hope that it is. Like, I love title inflation. That's great. Like, you interview all these guys and you're secretly like, hey, if you don't get the job, would you come do this? Like, that would be great. I think, one of the issues with Ecker, I think he's technically Texas's bench coach, and he left Cincinnati when he was like their director of hitting, right? So if you told me they could get Venable or whoever, right? Like the Lombard, but then Ecker was like their new director of hitting. Great. Sign me up for that. I just don't know that he's interested in anything other than manager. But yeah, like we see this all the time. Like Beef did his basketball, I'll do football. Like when the Bears were looking for an offensive coordinator and you interview 12 people and you hire Shane Waldron and then two of the guys you interviewed end up on his staff. I think it's pretty common to like talk to a bunch of people and then see if you can, maybe bring them over for different roles.
This is your guy here, Beef, and this is the problem that I had with Renneria. Said Renneria did a decent job through the rebuild until he had his hands on his knees in Game 3 of 2020. When I saw him walking over and doing that meme pose where he's like, hands on knees, looking like he's gassed, that's when I was like, oh, here we go. Seemed like he might be a little overmatched. But
you know what? I stand in defiance of this. If Garrett Crochet doesn't break. If I forget who started that game, Dane Dunning. If Dane Dunning can get 6 outs, if Carlos Rodon can get a left-handed hitter out, like a lot of the guys just didn't perform. And the plan was bullpen game, and you'll hear a lot of, well, they didn't do bullpen games during the year. That's fine. Bullpen games are when you need them, when you have to try to figure them out. The guys just didn't perform. I've heard that argument many times. I'd like to see Ricky get another shot at a bullpen game, and I think if the pitchers pitch a little better, they win that game.
Yeah. And I think Rick Hahn might have kept him if he knew what was about to happen. So,
hindsight's 2020.
Yeah, literally 2020. So speaking of 2025, and like what we're hoping that the manager is going to do, and this is something that we had been asked on a previous podcast, and we had talked to you about it afterwards, Beef. What does a successful 2025 look like? As far as the results go, what do you think?
It's a great question. I tried to look at this from a few different standpoints because I was like, when you're starting where you're starting, a successful year is going to mean something entirely different from our perspective versus other teams, right? And so I thought, okay, what about from the standpoint of the front office? What's a successful year? To me, it would be staying as transactional as they were. I thought it was a breath of fresh air that Chris Getz was as transactional as he was in that first year. Something that I was it usually upset me about the Hahn era of him GM, where I felt like they didn't move enough. They didn't turn over enough in certain spots, and they should have kept looking for guys. Getz did do that to limited levels of success, but I'd like to see them continue to do that. Look, if some guys have overstayed, it's time to not tender them a contract. If there's other teams that have guys teetering on, they're out of options and on the bubble for the roster, or they're Rule 5 eligible and the 40-mans are packed, go out there and search around and grab up those guys. We have the capacity to take some risks, take some shots at some of these players. And there's a lot of, to me, there's a lot of open plate appearances. There's potentially a lot of innings in the bullpen. I would like to see them do that. From a development standpoint, they got to produce at least one league average major league hitter this year. And I'm giving it a whole pile. I'll give it a whole pile because it's not only the internal guys. So like Montgomery, and they traded for Carroll, but he's been here for a couple of years. Ramos, Baldwin, but I'll even include like Vargas, Fletcher, Deloach. They can't keep bringing up guys who look athletic and can't hit at all. Like you can't, it's never sustainable. It's weird they got zero bump out of any of these dudes coming up, and they need to change that over the year. For me, from a team standpoint, forget record. I ain't worried about the record at all. Like the record's going to be crappy again. They got to get back to like league average defense. We were promised a good defense. They went out and bought defense. This defense is still fucking the worst defense. They've got to get back to the middle somehow. Absolutely. I'm not saying they have to non-tender Vaughn, but maybe they need to non-tender Vaughn. We'll see. We'll see how it turns out. $6
million in this economy. Like, are you kidding me? Like,
I thought about it. I'm a longtime Andrew Vaughn hater, and I've heard your thoughts on it, James. You're like, this is way too much for this guy. And I was trying to think, like, people were outraged. They're like, I can't believe you let Romy Gonzalez go. And I'm like, well, when Romy Gonzalez got to Boston, they only let him hit against left-handed pitching. And guess what? He can do that a little bit, right? And I thought, what if you took Andrew Vaughn? It's okay. We're gonna pay you $6 million. You're gonna DH. You never put a glove on. Okay, we're gonna go out and buy a first baseman that hits lefty and can handle playing defense there. And then you kind of only use Vaughn normally, but against tough righties with sliders that he has no shot at, you get him the hell out of the lineup and see it. What would it look like if you cut down on all his bad usage? I think one of the things we've been running into as White Sox, we don't have enough options, so we try to trot all these guys out here as everyday players, and they get swamped. They get absolutely drowned. And so I want to see them use guys a little more interchangeably, use them with their strengths, and he might be a good case. Even though I'm not the biggest Andrew Vaughn fan, if you were going to try it, I'd be worth it for maybe 1 year for me.
Yeah, I think like in regards to like the topic, just finding two position players, I think would be awesome. Like if you're like these two guys are on their next good team, I think that would be great because I do think like, I don't know. Like I think a lot of people feel like this team's just going to never spend money again, right? And the payroll is going to be 50 million or something, which can't be the case. And I understand like the RSN deal and like they're not going to spend like they used to and blah, 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 blah. But you look at their commitments, like they're not paying anybody anything. So,
yeah.
If you think you have this young pitching staff next year with a couple of top of the rotation type guys, and you think Colson Montgomery is decent and Caro is pretty good, like there's no reason you can't go buy 3 bats like for 2026. Like this doesn't, like they're not contending for World Series anytime soon, but this doesn't have to take this long. But they have to find a couple of bats like next year. That's like imperative. They can't do what they did this year where they're like running Nicky Lopez's and stuff out there constantly. Like they have to find a couple of guys.
Hey, he's nominated for a Gold Glove, man. Come on.
He's a good defender at second.
What's his number?
Better usage of those plate appearances, but
and his number is like 5 million, right? Not a chance. Like, no. Like I do think he's a good candidate for non-tender re-sign cheaper though. Like that's fine.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
be the bench guy. Here, you cover these spots when we need someone in there. Yeah, well, I like that you mentioned that, James, because I had Joe Sheehan on the Aju recently, and I asked him, what's the time period to get back into this? He said, in this era of baseball, it should be no more than 3 years to get yourself back in there. He goes, you just looked at the Royals. He goes, they're not in the same position as the White Sox. White Sox have no Bobby Witt Jr., but they were a 100-loss team, and now they're in the playoffs. So the windows can't be longer than 3 years to get back to like where you're in contention for that wild card. And I kind of agree with it. Turn it around quick. Sign some guys. Let's see what this looks like.
Yeah, I mean they've given themselves I won't say that they've given themselves, but they do have flexibility financially if they do decide to try and start to add to this team and add some bats to the team. They have to. There's no way you can't win games when you average 3 runs a game. Scientifically proven. It's like the Dodgers fall out of bed and score 9 runs.
Exactly.
So you have to be able to at least score 4 runs a game. And with the pitching that they've built, they can live at least in the 500 range if they're averaging 4 runs a game, because they generally pitch pretty well. So, I think that they are giving themselves enough options in the bullpen as well, with guys coming up from the minors, and they have such a glut of arms down there that they should be able to figure something out, but they have to score runs. Have to.
That was Ian, in hindsight, looking at the 2024 season, it was my happiest thing is that they didn't hesitate to get rid of all the guys they signed who sucked and they couldn't trade them. They gutted those guys immediately and said, hey, Gus Farland, get up here. Prelander Baroa, get up here. Frazier Eller, get up here. And those guys were much better. It was like, wow, they turned it over in a second. And they're like, look, you ain't producing? Here, these guys are going to take the spot. And now they're set up with a bullpen with a bunch of guys who have minor league options. They can send them back down, recharge with a new fresh arm. Like the way they're built in the bullpen, I like it. And we'll see who's got real upside out of the group, but they seem to like have a good setup, at least at this point.
Yeah.
Beef, I've brought this up on other shows, like spending real money on the bullpen, like specifically to flip guys at the deadline. Kind of like Kansas City signed Aroldis Chapman, and now they have Cole Ragans, like because of that, right? And
best result.
And there's so little bang for your buck with John Brebias and some of the guys they signed. Like if you're gonna do that, like spend $13 million on a closer that's good and then trade him.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. And they have room to do that, right? They have a bunch of these young guys, but no guy that you necessarily think that person needs to be anointed as the closer tomorrow. So like in the offseason, that's like an easy, go get that one guy that that you can flip, or maybe even 2 guys, because you got the room to do it if you need to, and you have the young arms to kind of back them up. And if God forbid those guys fail or whatever, some of these young guys, I mean, they look good in high leverage. I'll be honest with you, I love that they had traded Gregory Santos, and Prelander Baroa had been hurt, and so we hadn't seen a lot of him. When we saw him down the stretch, I was like, this guy has real stuff. This guy is good. Like I was happy to see him come in the game down the stretch when my steak dinner bet was on the line, and he's one of the guys that saved my ass. So forever, him and Frazier Eller and Gus Farland, I should invite him to the dinner. They were that important.
Yeah, and they got the draft pick in that trade, and obviously, whatever, right? But I think it's just always good business. Like if you can steal one of those picks to get extra money to use, and then that's what they did. And we didn't know at the time that Gregory Santos was never going to pitch in a Brian Bannister organization ever again. That was one of the things that came out after was just this guy's, he was when Chris Getz offered him the job, he was one condition, I can trade Gregory Santos before he falls asleep again.
Yep.
Yeah, he must have caught him sleeping in the dugout or something, had to have been. I mean, we heard about it here. There was the rumors swirling around that he was sleeping in the bullpen. So kind of, maybe there was some, him hinting at something, that had happened previously.
He's traded him 3 times. So,
yeah, he's following him around to get rid of him.
It's like Billy Bean or Brad Pitt's version of Billy Bean in Moneyball when he goes and tells JC or the other Giambi himself. He's like, let me call Gregory and tell him. Yeah. I'm going to call him and tell him myself, Chris.
So it's been brought up here. We were talking about Vaughn. And a guy that I like to talk about quite a bit, Tim Elko, is in the AFL. What is your level of interest for the AFL, Beef?
I mean, I do eyeball the stats. And I did watch the show you guys did recently with the gentleman who is out there in Arizona, was catching some of the games. I DM'd you, Ian. I said the guy was good. I enjoyed the analysis. He was a little too horny for Michael Turner. That guy's just a backup catcher. So we were going back and forth a little bit. I would look at it from a surface level. I know we're not supposed to scout the stats, but I don't know how to scout the player, so I only look at the stats. So I've been looking at the stats a little bit. I look at it from two perspectives. With the hitters, since it's such a good hitting environment, I look at it as if they're dragging ass out there, that may be a problem. And last year, that was Colson Montgomery. He was really struggling in AFL and was like, oh, is something wrong here, whatever. And he started his regular season cold like that. Switch back to this season, Colson Montgomery is red hot and on fire and kicking everyone's ass in. And like, I think he only has 1K, but he has like 9 walks or something crazy. Like he's really dominating the level. And so that's, it doesn't tell me like, oh, he's going to be on the roster to start the year and killing it, but I have a little assurance there. You know, the aforementioned Tim Elko, he has hit for some power, but it's 1 walk and 13 Ks and like a 50% K rate. So I was a little like, oh, Tim, man, you gotta get that under control. And some of the other hitters are struggling more than these guys. These guys are at least putting some power there. So, but it's a super small sample size. So for me, I don't know really what to garner with it. Conversely, with the pitchers, if they struggle, I don't really worry that much because the environment is brutal against them. And so, like, I've looked them up. None of them are really dominating too much. But also, there's nothing too scary in the profiles either. Yeah, they get banged around for 2 innings. Who cares? Like, Ian, you're watching, like you're eyeballing, and you can really like look at the players and see, is there anything you're seeing in AFL out of the aforementioned guys that you're like, oh, this is like a step forward, or this is a meaningful data point, basically, because it's a short amount of games.
Yeah, it is. I'd say one guy that that doesn't get talked about really a whole lot, and if you look at his stats, it doesn't look like he's dominating because he's not doing what he did in Birmingham and Winston-Salem, which is Eric Adler. He's not striking out a ton of guys.
Okay.
But what he is doing is he's getting a lot of outs, which if you hadn't noticed in the Arizona Fall League, these guys struggle getting outs. They struggle. And he's doing really well. I mean, he's not his whip. I haven't looked at his whip, but his whip's got to be, at least respectable. And for the AFL, it's going to be real good. There's that. Colson Montgomery's hitting the ball the other way. Okay. And to me, that's huge. When you see him, like when you do see him have really long at bats, which usually end up in walks, it's a lot of him trying to pull the ball.
Okay.
Instead of going with it, because he'll just, swing and go with it and hit a single and be fine. But like most of his walks, he's got a couple that are 4-pitch walks, but there's quite a few that are like 8-pitch, 7-pitch walks that he's actually working to get these walks. Lots of foul balls. I'd say that's probably like the major things. Elko, yeah, he is striking out. It's weird with him because he'll go one game where he's 0 for 4 and he'll have 4 strikeouts. But then the next game he'll come out and he'll go, 3 for 4. So he's getting hits. I think I don't know. I like to see some more at bats, and the camera angles are really bad as well.
It's tough to see. I know he's got 3 homers already, so I mean, he's driving the ball for sure. So like, I'm just curious.
Yeah, he's hitting the ball. He's getting hits, and his average is halfway decent. It's just there is a lot of strikeouts and not that many walks.
And I think that's the difference between Elko and like Vaughn or Sheets. Like Elko understands the assignment, right? Like for you to be anything, like you have to hit like a ton of bombs, right? But I think part of that comes with just like the high K rates. Like he didn't walk a ton throughout the minors, and with that he almost needed a homer more. Like I was a little disappointed at Birmingham, but then he went to Charlotte and like went off like he should have. Like that's exactly what should happen. So I don't like these guys that get like Sheets, right? Sheets gets caught in between. He's like a power hitter that's not really a power hitter because he just like, that's not the opportune way for him to play. But if he's not a power hitter, he's totally useless. I don't think Elko has that issue. I think he'll be if it's a 35% K rate, but he also hits bombs, like he might hang around at least a little bit, like against maybe lefties only.
Interesting. Yeah, that's I mean, and this should be a roster where they could use something like that. I would think if you're gonna take some shots, this is the time to take some shots at that.
Yeah. Do you want to pay Andrew Vaughn $6.4 million, or do you want to pay Tim Elko nothing?
Thank you. That's exactly what I'm saying. Why are we giving this guy all sorts of money when Tim Elko is literally going to put up the better stats with at least as a higher slug? He'll probably hit for the same average. He'll just have a higher slug.
Yeah, because even like Beef, like if Vaughn goes to whatever, right, some great hitting organization, right? Like, what would it even take to feel burnt on that? Like, what does he have to do to where we even care? Because you got all the Kopech people, right? Like, oh, the Dodgers fixed Kopech, which is nonsense. Like, for Vaughn to go somewhere else, I feel like he'd have to turn into like a 35 home run hitter. And like that's just not gonna. It's just not gonna happen anywhere.
Yeah, it's not in the cards for him. What's funny is all the arguments on Twitter too. None of the arguments are, "Oh, I see. There's more upside in Andrew Vaughn." People already think he's good enough, and it's like, no, he's no good. When you look at him against the other first baseman, he's bad. Like he's in the bottom half in slugging. He's almost at the bottom in on base percentage of guys with at least 300 plate appearances or whatever from last year. It's like he really struggled. The defense is terrible. Like all this stuff. It's like you didn't look at it and say, well, he was a 116 WRC plus from June 1 on. So after he had the struggles, in the beginning, he hit better. Or you don't look at him and say, well, the launch angle increased this last year, so I see more upside. No one is saying that shit. So I don't assume no one thinks there's a lot of upside here. And I'm with you. If he went somewhere and hit 35 bombs, tip of the cap. All right, you got us. I don't care.
Well, I think the issue, like I thought he was gonna be, like maybe only 25 homers or so, but I thought he'd be on base like all the time. Like I thought he was going to be like a 375 on base guy, and he's very clearly like not that, obviously. So like I don't really get it. And like the thing I heard a lot of in my mentions was like, well, they don't have anybody else. Who else are they going to spend the money on? And I'm like, I don't know, but that doesn't mean he's worth $6.4 million. Like it's just he's not good enough. Who do you replace him with? I don't know yet.
Anyone, pick someone out of a hat.
I don't. Yeah, like I don't know. I told Ian I wanted a fat lefty DH.
I love it. I heard you wanted to just put lefty power hitter over there, and
whatever.
I agree. We need that. We need that. Yeah, absolutely.
The whole thing's so frustrating. And like let's see so many comments here. I know Vaughn's coming back. I know.
I think he is coming back. Yeah. I would not bring him back, but I think they'll tender him for sure.
100%. It's frustrating. Like I know that I would rather have literally almost anybody at first base other than Vaughn at this point.
James, you said lefty fat guy. Who do you like? You like Vogelbach? You like Rowdy Tellez? Like who's your lefty fat guy of choice that you would put over there? That's what I got to hear.
Yeah, I kind of like Vogelbach, but he wasn't as good as I thought he was. So, it's probably like the same thing. I don't know. I mean, even like, I don't know. Like, who's the guy that's not fat that was pretty Rhys Hoskins for the Brewers? Like, like whatever. Like, you could do that and still be terrible. Like, which I think they want to be. Like, just entertain. I want him to at least hit some bombs.
Hit some home runs.
If you're gonna be bad, hit bombs.
Someone would put in the comments and say, well, Josh Bell, he doesn't even have to be good. He gets traded every deadline. You sign him and he comes in and he stinks and you still can trade him to some other team. They want him.
Yeah. I'd be perfectly fine with Rhys Hoskins. I'd be perfectly fine.
It'd be a nice fit. I like it.
Yeah. And like the thing is that his teammates absolutely adore him. And the guy, he does run into one occasionally. He'll take some walks too. So I can live with that. So I guess, like just kind of wrapping up this whole thing, do you have any like overall offseason thoughts, anything, that you're expecting to see, something that you want to see other than Andre Vaughn getting launched to the sun? What other kind of things, obviously we've got the possibility of a Crochet trade. What would you want to see back from that? I mean, there are so many things here that like this, like I mentioned right off the rip, this org is in flux and there's just so much stuff that can be happening. What do you think's happening this offseason?
Well, it kind of it lines up for me in this particular order. Manager hire, which James, I saw your tweet today. It was like they can hire a manager as soon as Thursday, and I was thinking we did a game on the 108 podcast, and I picked Wednesday actually of this week. This week, so I was like, yes, let's go, let's sign someone that quick. I think it's manager hire first, then you're going to get to the non-tenders and see if the White Sox will make any moves off of the group, like get rid of Gavin Sheets, get rid of Andrew Vaughn, kind of some of those moves. The Crochet trade is like the next thing on the list, and it's the biggest thing, truth be told. But what's interesting about these trades now, you saw a little bit of this flavor with Eric Fetty, who is nowhere near Crochet's cachet or whatever. But these deals, in old days, you could go look at Baseball America's list. All right, we're going to get their number 1, their number 3, their number 8, and their number 12 prospects or whatever. But the game's changed now. You don't get a lot of those high guys, and you still get value or whatever value approximation is now. But these trades have so much more volatility because you got to depend more on your scouts picking their 18 and 19-year-olds correctly and getting those guys in house. And so I don't remember who said it. Might have been Herb Lawrence said it during the year. He said, no matter what they get for Garrett Crochet, the White Sox fans will hate it. And I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, yeah, because we don't really understand what we're getting back in return. The Fetty trade, we got a couple teenagers. We, as regular fans, don't understand that. But when you dig down into it, you're like, these guys seem pretty decent. This seems like a fairly decent haul. Maybe it's not as bad as I thought. And so the Crochet thing, I think, is going to be a lot of like excitement about that it's probably going to happen. And I would be shocked if they don't move him this offseason. I think that's number 1 on their list to kind of like turn him over. I'm not so sure Luis Robert goes anywhere, but I think Crochet goes. But then once the trade comes through, there's probably going to be parts of it where you're like, well, that person's only, they just played in the DSL and they're, I don't know nothing about them kind of deal. And I think it'll make for a lot of chaos out there. But beyond that, any surprise trades that they make, stuff that I'm not expecting. Like I wasn't necessarily expecting them to trade Gregory Santos last year, but they did it. And so, and the dumpster dives, like who do they pick up? Who are the 1-year guys that they get in on? I like all that shit. I like all the like, who's this goofy guy they're bringing in here? When they bring in Paul DeYoung, we're like on our podcast, we're like, this guy might hit 20 homers, and so all that stuff interests me. But the entree here, the ribeye is Garrett Crochet trade, and I think the whole offseason is going to weigh on that after the manager hire.
One thing that you did mention that I want to just reply to, and then James, whatever you need to say here, is you said that you have to rely on your scouts. The White Sox don't have any more scouts. They fired them all.
That's right.
So
that's right.
There is that. They don't have any pro scouts anymore. So
yeah, I will say, like, for as I guess frustrating as the process for Chris Getz was, right? And Beef, you and I have talked about this. Like, I don't know whether Chris Getz is good or not, but he's kind of acted like an outside hire would, where like he's just like launched a bunch of dudes, and like they're not all replaced yet, right? And I don't know if David Keller can bring in international prospects, but I know like Marco Patti thing that was done, right? And it doesn't take a genius to figure that out, right? So they've just like done a lot of these like little things that I think are good, and then he trades for Miguel Vargas, which isn't good. So it's like, like I think he deserves more time. Like, I don't think it's, like the Crochet is going to tell us a lot. Like how soon they make the trade. Like, does he wait again until February until he hears what he wants? Like, I think he's going to hear what he wants, because 2 years of Garrett Crochet, you had a lot of big boys like go down. You had Philly and all these teams that are going to be interested in doing this, like that aren't going to win the World Series. Like, I think that's your winter meetings topic is Garrett Crochet. It'll be every Sunday in the Nightingale notes, like the entire package will be in there, and then it'll never happen because it's public. But yeah, I love that stuff. Hot Stove's awesome.
Hot Stove's about. Well, I mean, good points there, James, because just watching the MLB playoffs, which had great drama and everything, but half these teams and half the games are doing bullpen games. It's like, you'd like to have Garrett Crochet for 5 innings. Like when they've got Tarek Skubal out there, well, yeah, you got a stud out there. He's going to give you 6 good innings. It's like, oh, these teams are craving that sort of thing, and no one's got it. They're just like kind of like, oh, well, we're patched together. It was funny watching the Mets versus the Dodgers. Like, the Mets have the rotation depth, and I'm like, the rotation ain't that good either. Like, Jose Quintana will give you 5 innings, so that's great compared to what is out there. And so, like, you got to think the price for Crochet would be high with these standards. So I'm excited for it. I'm also excited for when they don't get when they don't get two real big like headliner names and everyone's like, this trade sucks. That's when I'll get really excited about it.
This is
when you'll get excited.
Yes. Oh yeah, for sure.
That'll be great for me, like.
This is like way off topic, and you guys probably talked about it on your show. But what did you think when, like all those articles came out, and we found out that the White Sox hired like an Ivy League Navy SEAL to totally fix their entire org? Apparently,
well, it's funny. We were like, how did this not come out anywhere? Right?
Anywhere. None of the beat writers had it. Like it was just tucked away in this national story.
Okay, so that happens, right? We talk about it on the show, and we kind of talk about it in jest. We're like messing around a little bit with it. And then I had Scott Merkin on Ju a little bit after that, and I asked him, did you know who this guy was? And he kind of gave the, oh yeah, I was aware he was there, and I heard nothing but good things about him, and gave almost no details. I'm like, you didn't really know who this guy was. You probably saw him and said, who's that guy? Oh, that's so-and-so. And nothing else came of it. It's weird, and I reached out to a large national reporter who it might have been in one of his article that it came out. And I said, what do you think about this? And he said, well, if you get these types of hires right, not like how the Houston Texans did. They did not get it right when they did this. But he's like, if you get this type of hire right, super valuable for your team. But obviously, it can go very wrong as well. So I think we still don't know really the full capacity of what this person's doing. If they're just doing like kind of process or whatever, who cares? But if they're really got their hands in a lot of pies, yeah, that's interesting. Something that popped up out of nowhere, and now it's kind of gone again. Like you haven't heard the name again since.
Ryan Muller.
Very strange.
Yeah,
it was hard to find pictures of him. Even
like, did he get all the scouts fired? Like, is that like, hey, you should fire all these people like right now? Like just. And I'm curious to see if the White Sox are the team that hires all the fired pro scouts. You know what I mean? Because like that is like I think that's one of the good Reinsdorf things is that he'll never be one of these like all data orgs where you don't have any scouts, because that's that's nuts. Like like if a bunch of good scouts got fired, go hire them and then maybe like be better at something than somebody else for a change.
Well, right now it feels like a market inefficiency. If everyone is gutting their scouts and they're all relying on video or whatever, good, then the best guys are out there. Go grab some of them guys up and like it seems like going the other zigging when the other ones are zagging is a good idea in the short term. So I don't know if they'll actually do it, but I agree with you there.
Yeah, there was an article in Baseball America that basically said exactly that with everybody firing all their scouts, like sometimes you need to have scouts there to see how some guy's body language is. I know we talk about Bears fans are like the kings of the body language, reading, but
not anymore. We have our guy now. Shut up.
Yeah. all right.
That's correct. Super Bowl. All right, let's go. And Jaden Daniels hurt. He might not play next week. We're gonna kick the Commander's ass too.
Yeah, that was it's a rib injury or something. Yeah. Oof, that's gonna linger too. You need to have somebody there to kind of see how these guys handle adversity. Like how, you look at, you sit here and see all your analytics all you want, but, when you see a guy, throwing his bat halfway across the diamond after he strikes out, red flag, and if there's nobody there to see it.
If you want all the data, that's a data point too. And you got to consider all the data. I was watching the other night, one of the pregame shows, and they were talking about like, who they would run on. And Jimmy Rollins is given a rundown of the things that he would look into with the particular pitcher that they were facing the next day. And I'm guessing that, he didn't pull that from a spreadsheet. He watched and said, oh, that guy does this when he gives you an extra split second when he does that. And it's like, yeah, that shit is also data collection as well. And you might as well collect all of it.
Absolutely. You got anything pressing here, James? Any questions?
Yeah, one more probably. All
right.
So me and Ian touched on this. Like it was like all over the place. Like their point of emphasis is like the analytics department, right? Because they've gotten destroyed over it and whatever. What do you think fixing the analytics department means? Like what are they just going to announce like some guy that's like running it and then you don't hear about any? Are they going to announce 20 names? Like we kind of talked about like what exactly this means, because it does seem to be like a priority, and they're gonna talk about it like once they think they've fixed it.
I was gonna say, I would assume they're gonna put some name in there that is recognizable to the general public to do it. But I mean, what does it mean? Fix the analytics department? Like, you gather data and you see where you can garner an edge, or you see where you can garner a better understanding of something. You know, it's like just having all the data is meaningless. You have to crunch it in a way in which it leads you to, oh, this will work well against XYZ, or you know, people aren't doing this that often. We could try this and see if it will garner an edge for us. So my assumption would be it will be hire some name that you've heard of, maybe hire some extra bodies. I'd heard that they'd hired some extra bodies, kind of like not name brand people, but just some more bodies in the building. Let's say last year with regards to the analytics department. And so I assume it's just like a get out of the crosshairs of everyone who claims that they're cheap on analytics approach. But inevitably, I mean, you could find edges if you got 50 people or 5 people. It just depends on how, if you're looking in the right spots or you got the right people doing it.
And one guy gives the player like B war, and the other guy does F war, and then you know, like that kind of. This is God. What a freaking disaster! Like it's it's like all these articles came out, and we knew kind of like we follow this closely, right? And others do too, and the bloggers and whatever, and like we know it's bad, and then you read it, and you're just like, oh my God, I've been right the whole time. Like it's like even worse. Like this, like the whole like it's just all of your fears like proving true when all these like articles get written about how horrible the organizations run.
We knew it was terrible. Just the problem is that it was left to conjecture. When we had actual evidence of exactly how awful it was that we actually already knew, that was what made it worse. You know, actually having proof that it's as stupid as you think it is. That was the worst part.
Yeah. All right. So I didn't like source this, which, you know, like occasionally I do, but it's just a guess that they'll hire a manager Thursday, just because like it makes sense, like for the timeline, if they want somebody there. So Ian, not who you want. Who do you think they're going to hire?
Oh, geez.
Beef can go first if he wants.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
We're not going to be on for another week, so
I'll say it's not one of my guys, but I'll say they hire Clayton McCullough.
Yeah, so you're riding with Bruce Levine. That's probably smart in this case, because I'm pretty sure that Bruce Levine is buddies with Clayton McCullough's father. So,
okay, you know, that's how he knows.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah, who was like a pro scout. Yeah, I think that's a good guess, and I let Beef go first, so he got it. But I'll say I'll go George Lombard.
That was what I was going to say, since he said Clayton McCullough.
One of those two.
I mean, I you know, like I kind of think that it's going to be like possibly something like, you know, like I brought up earlier, that it's going to be like you know, they're going to hire one guy and then a couple of these guys are going to end up somewhere, is my guess. I'm going to kind of go with Clayton McCullough as well. You know, a lot of experience, you know, that's and comes from the baseball family, blah blah, you know, all that, you know, all the old boy network stuff.
Yeah,
that you're used to hearing.
Like, would Clayton McCullough leave a first base job to be a bench coach, or would he just stay? You know, because like him and George Lombard were there together. There's all these like connections of guys that are tied together, so that like it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think that it for them to, like, you know, you might be able to get a couple of these guys to jump ship to come here and you know, get like some sort of a bump, but it's going to have to be something that's going to be a market bump, and it's also they're going to have to pay them. You know, they're going to have to spend some money. Nobody's going to want to come here for, you know, like the bottom rung of salaries here. You know, that's one thing that I'm just kind of. I don't think they're going to be able to just get guys to come here. Everybody knows how bad it is, how bad it has been here. So you're going to have to sweeten the pot somehow.
I don't know. There's only 30 of them. Somebody up there. These guys are these guys are nuts. They always think they can fix it. I'll fix it.
Fair enough. Yeah. So from the 108, Beef, you want to tell us what, you know, like where everybody can find your stuff. Just run through
Absolutely.
that massive battery of stuff you got going on.
Sure. At From the 108 on Twitter, YouTube, / From the 108. Thursday nights are our 108 podcast live stream at 8 p.m. Central Time. And then I also have a side podcast called The Au. You guys have both been on it before. It's at 6 p.m. on Monday nights. That's also a live stream on YouTube. My personal Twitter's at Mr. Delicious13. You can see it on the screen there if you're watching on YouTube. Upcoming things we have, it's a little ways off in December, but we do a big group show called Festivus, where we have a bunch of different guests come through and air grievances. That's kind of our next big event on tap. But we're streaming every Thursday and Monday. Upcoming on Au Jus, Teresi and I are the next 3 episodes are going to be us doing our White Sox trade with every team blogs, videos. They're a lot of fun. I'll tell you what, guys, just to give us a little sneak preview of that. I've been looking in the farm and seeing if we can do 1-for-1 trades with our top prospects. And so I have Noah Schultz packing his bags and going other places for a hitter in return. So these could be interesting to see because the White Sox have limited trade chips. And so we're going to have to get a little creative with that. So those are coming up.
I was just going to ask you how many of my guys you're gonna chop off, man, because every year you guys do that. It's always like, and it's just all my guys are gone. Hey, you know what though? Just a quick kudos. Guy who signed with the Mariners that you guys were talking about, Robles.
Victor Robles.
You know?
He went over there, he played well, and they gave him an extension. It was crazy. Yeah.
Did, yeah. So that's a feather in your cap right there.
That's an old one.
So FutureSox.net, you can find all of our wonderful publications, including Trending on the Farm from Sleepy Harold, who just dropped today on the AFL. He went down to Arizona and saw Colson Montgomery down there, along with the other boys. At FutureSox on Twitter. If you are listening to this in podcast form, which you can find anywhere you find your podcast, know that we also stream live on the YouTube and on the Purple app. My name is Ian Eskridge at Daily White Sox. He is James Fox at James Fox 917. Beefloaf, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you, boys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Always a great time. We appreciate having you on. Everybody in the comments, we appreciate you guys. Quick little question. Snap decision. Who wins the World Series? I saw the question in the comments, so I'm going to ask, and we're not on for another week, so we'll probably still have, possibly some time. But Beefloaf, who do you got winning?
I got Yankees in 5.
James?
Ooh. Yeah, I have the Yankees too. I'll go 6 though.
I got Dodgers in 6.
Nice.
So there we go. All right. So we appreciate you guys. Thanks for coming, hanging out in the chat. Thanks for all the questions, and thanks for watching. We appreciate you guys, and we will talk with you soon. Thank you. Have a great night.